Let's talk first, Lane, about when you first ended up in Milwaukee. It was rather late in the process, wasn't it, when you came to Milwaukee?
Yeah, it was. It was a situation where I was out of work. I was in Bridgeport the year before, and they cleaned house there, and I was one of the casualties. And I had made a couple of phone calls. I called Paul Fenton, and Todd Richards had just been hired in Wilkes-Barre, and it was late there when he got hired. So Claude Noel was looking for an assistant. I didn't know Claude. And I knew Paul, and Paul mentioned my name to Claude, and Claude interviewed 3 guys. Don't know who the other 2 were, but you know, I was in Cleveland, Ohio at the time, and I said, I'll drive to Milwaukee, you know, just so I can meet with you face to face. And he said, no, let's just talk on the phone. So we talked on the phone, and he called me back a couple days later and said you're hired. And so I drove into Milwaukee to meet with him, and it was one of those. I was staying at the Hilton, and it was one of those where he says he's coming to pick me up, and he says, "What are you wearing?" And I said, "What are you driving?" You know, we had no idea what the other one looked like, and so I mean, I still to this day have so much respect for Claude for everything, but for the fact that you know, it didn't matter to him. He picked who he thought was the best hockey guy, not somebody that he knew. So. It worked out real well, and then obviously when he left to go to Columbus, I ended up getting the head coaching job in Milwaukee, and that was a godsend.
You know as well as anybody, this is a business, like all businesses, you got to know somebody. You really do, and to end up that way,
yeah,
that's pretty crazy. I can't imagine you've got many jobs in the past like that.
No, I mean, if you track back, I guess Paul Fenton put my name in there, sure. So there's knowing somebody, but then, you know, like any other business, it doesn't matter who you are, or you know, you've got to be able to do the job in order to keep the job.
Especially working that close together.
Exactly. So you know, we formed a real quick friendship. Claude's that kind of guy, and he, I mean, I learned so much from him over the course of 1 year that it was a great experience for me.
Now, you mentioned when he went to Columbus and you took over as the head coach. What was that process like? I mean, did you kind of think that, okay, it's my job to have, or did you go in it with a real competitive feeling, like, okay, I got to win this head coaching position?
Well, what happened, and fortunately, you know, our Predator organization is, you know, it has always been based on developing from within and promoting from within. That's the reason I'm here in Nashville now. You know, it was just a matter of whether or not they felt I could do the job, which they did, and whether or not I felt I could do the job, which I did. And they weren't really looking around. They you know, they had been with me for a year. Claude had a lot of input as to what he thought the process should be or could be, and Paul and David made that decision. So you know, it's just a matter of, like I say, staying within the organization and promoting from within, and it's you know, that's one of the great things about the Nashville Predator organization.
You mentioned Claude. You interviewing on the phone and getting the job. How was it then to get your assistance? Was it your call? Was it your final call with first Brad Lauer and then Ian Herbers?
Yeah, it was. It was at the end of the day. I mean, you had to come up with some. You know, obviously there was some candidates, and I talked to a few people. Both times, I talked to a few different people. But at the end of the day, it was my choice. It's. I think you mentioned it before. You work so closely with a guy.
Right.
That you know, you're together probably 12 to 14 hours a day.
More than the family.
Exactly. So there's got to be, you know, a gel there, a mix there, and I picked who I thought was the best hockey guy, just like Claude did. I did not know Ian Herbers when I hired him, but I thought, you know, in talking to him, I thought that he was the best guy for the job, being a defenseman. And in Brad Lauer's case, I had known Brad for quite a while, and I knew his hockey knowledge. So you know, that part of it, regardless of whether I knew him or not, was a slam dunk for me.
You want to talk too about a couple of guys that played for you. Your first year as a head coach, you had a pretty good goalie that first year, and I think we were surprised that he was still there that season. But Pecorino was the goalie his third and final year in Milwaukee. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we were surprised. We kind of thought maybe that you know, we were going to have a different goalie, and things didn't work out that way. And for Pekka, you know, it was a process for him to get to where he is today, and he handled it with, you know, with the professionalism that he has, and he handled it like the person that he is. And he used that experience just to get better and better. And I think we played him 72 games that year.
Close, yeah.
So it was, you know, it was a great thing for our hockey team to have him.
Right.
No question about it. It was nice. It's a nice, comforting feeling as a coach when you go into a game and you know you've got a goaltender like that, and just the different aspects that he has in his game. And you know, Dave Basiggio was coaching Peoria at the time, a good friend of mine that I played with before, and you know, they couldn't forecheck us because every time they put it into the wrong area, Pekka would play the puck. So, you know, we had the good fortune of having him there for that year. However it happened, he ended up being there for that season, and I think it worked out better not only for us but also for him in the long run.
A couple of guys that really improved under your watch with the Admirals, Rich Peverly.
Yeah, well, he started with Claude. Claude found him in the East Coast League, I think, in Toledo. Perhaps.
Reading, I believe.
Reading, I'm sorry, yeah. And you know, Pevs is a guy who could skate and move. He just needed to, you know, just have some of the finer details of the game. And the nice thing about coaching Rich Peverly is always very receptive to coaching, and that's how a guy gets better. You know, you have to understand that there's things to learn, and you have your strengths and your weaknesses, and if you're coachable, you can improve on those weaknesses, and he certainly did. And you know, now he's got a Stanley Cup.
Yep. Cal O'Reilly.
Yeah, Cal, one of the best players, obviously, that has played in a Milwaukee Admiral uniform, and just so much talent, so much skill, and a lot of, you know, I guess, jam, you could say. Cal O'Reilly played through some injuries and through some aches and pains, and he took beatings that that not a lot of guys or some guys wouldn't be able to withstand. You know, not a big guy, but so talented and just so cerebral, thought the game so well. He made some pretty nice plays. He was the kind of guy who could bring people out of their seats with different things that he did, and there was just no way to predict. I remember one night in Quad Cities, when we won a game there, and he made a backhand, a no-look pass across the crease that Ryan McGill, their coach, after the game said, "This guy's just unbelievable." So, you know, he did very, very well, and you know, he didn't, unfortunately for him, it didn't quite translate into the National Hockey League level, but he's doing very well over in the KHL right now.
You had a couple of very special teams when you were the coach there that were close to going the distance. I got to imagine, and I don't want to bring up bad things, but
well, that's okay.
Two of the more disappointing finishes to seasons, losing to Houston in those semifinals those years.
Yeah, you can replay those game sevens over and over and over again. It's really disappointing. You know, you really feel like had you won that game, you know, you perhaps would have won the cup. And you know, the first time we lost to them, we lost Game 7 5-2. We just, you know, they scored 2 goals right off the hop. It's just one of those things. And we won Game 6, I think, 8-0.
Right.
And that was the worst thing that could have happened to us. And I tried to warn them, you know, one game at a time. But you know, they came out and they got a couple of goals on us, and they ended up beating us 5-2. And we didn't play that well in that game. The second time, and probably with the best team we've had, certainly, we lost that game on a late goal there down the wing by Wellman, and you know, it's just bounce here and a bounce there. Well, you know, they went to shoot it off the wall and it hit a partition, and all of a sudden it's a 2-on-1, right?
Exactly.
So things happen in hockey, and there's ups and downs, but those certainly hurt. I really do think that, you know, either of those two or both of those teams could have won a championship.
When you look back at your time in Milwaukee, what stands out? What sticks with you?
Well, I think really it's the friends and the people within the organization. You know, I keep in contact with them. It was just a tremendous organization to work for. Harris is a great man. John's a good man, and you know, the organization itself does so much for the community. And you know, at that stage in my life, where you know, our daughter was 2 years old when we moved there, and so really, those years there where she's growing and starting school and preschool and kindergarten and all that, those are things that are really the most important things. The hockey side of it was fantastic because we had good teams and we had great people playing for us. But overall, the whole, as a whole, it was just the time I spent there and the city. It was a great time.